welcome to this week's Slow Flow. I'm Hannah from To The Being Online Yoga Studio. We're going to start lying down, and in terms of props, it could always be useful to have a block or two if you've got them. If not, it's going to be okay. You can still manage without. So we'll just start in a shape that works for you. Lying on your back, you might have legs long, you might have soles of feet together, knees wide. You might have the knees teepeed together like I've landed, something I feel particularly comfortable in personally, but doesn't necessarily mean you have to copy me here. And just choosing where you might rest the arms. Maybe you notice that there's something going on, bubbling beneath the surface for you today. Perhaps it's an image that keeps popping into your mind, a sensation. Maybe it's just a couple of words or sentences. But just a moment to pause and check in. I like to use these moments as a moment to inquire. And I'm going to add the word to gently inquire. Our yoga practice can be used as a wonderful tool to become familiar with what's going on internally for us. It's like taking the temperature, our own little weather gauge as to how we're feeling today. So bring soles of feet to the earth when you're ready, and then perhaps you can just cross that right leg over the top of the left, and that could be enough. You might stay here, in fact. If you feel like you could go that little bit further, we're seeing if we can gather both knees up and in. So you might just try that, taking hold of the knees. If you're finding that that's really challenging, lower the left foot back down and just sort of hug the right knee in on its own. That's fine too. If you've managed to gather both of the legs, you might try to lower the hands a little bit down the shins. It might be that you work them all the way down to the ankles or even the outer blade of the feet. And if it feels nice, you might even add just a really gentle rock of the pelvis. So it's like I'm trying to draw my left hip further away from the left shoulder, and then it'll get closer as I draw the right hip away from the right shoulder, and a little sway side to side there. So you don't have to do that at all. It's just if that kind of feels nourishing to you in this moment. And just maybe one or two more breaths here. And then slowly undo the hands as you lower the left foot to the ground. Open the arms, maybe cactus plant them or stretch them out. Press into your left foot and just start to lower lower your knees down towards the left side. You might feel that that's too intense, keeping the bind here. So if you've got a pillow or a block, you might wedge that underneath the knees there. Or you could undo the bind. You don't have to be in that full bind of the legs. And we're saying just for 2 more breaths. And then we'll slowly lift our way back up. Plant the feet as wide as your mat. Shimmy the hips to the center. And if it feels good, little windscreen wiper the legs from side to side. Or you could lengthen the legs and just sort of wave the toes side to side a little bit there on the mat. So we'll be coming back to center and to neutral, keeping soles of feet to the earth, and then it'll be your left leg that balances over the top of the right. So it's like you're crossing the thighs. If you want to, you'll just take hold of the left knee in towards the body, or you're trying to gather both of those knees, just doing what you can. Maybe you're holding onto the knees and you stay like that. Or if there's room, you travel the hands down the shins, and it's like your feet cross opposite directions from one another. It's like your knees cross opposite directions. And I'm not really pulling tight on those legs. I'm just kind of allowing the weight of my arms to pull my legs wider. And then again, if it feels good, you might take the little sway, but you don't have to. You might choose that stillness is where you want to be right now. And let's go for one more breath. So our reclined cow face or shoelace pose. I'm going to release the hands, lower the right foot to the ground, spread the arms. For me, I like to shimmy my hips a little bit towards the left side before I let the knees drop down to the right, but you do what feels okay for you, for your spinal twist, supine twist. And it could be that you've wedged a pillow or a block underneath those knees. Maybe you've unbound the legs. And then slowly coming back up towards center, undo the crisscross of the legs, shimmy the hips to the center, the feet as wide as your mat. And again, if you wanted to, a little windscreen wipe with those legs. You might choose to lengthen the legs instead and wave the toes side to side. So for some of us, rolling to the side, coming onto hands and feet is where you want to be. Or if you're okay with a rock and roll, just gather the feet overhead, roll your way forwards. Next time I do this, I'm going to cross my ankles and then shoot my hands forwards and step back. You might step back in a different way, but let's see if we can come to meet in downward dog. And you might choose to pedal that out and just feel into the back of the ankles, the heels, the legs, a little sway of the hips here. If it feels good, maybe empty out the breath through the mouth as loud as you like. And then I invite you to drop the knees, keep the toes tucked if you can. Now I'm going to bring my knees quite close together here and just see what you can do by bringing the hips back towards the heels, known as a toe squat. If you feel like you can go further, you'll actually start to lift yourself up and bring your hands on top of your thighs. Not everyone's going to go here. This might be too intense, so just keep yourself leaning forwards, hands on the earth if you need to. And I'm seeing if I can keep all of my 10 toes tucked. It's very stimulating for those feet, great for the plantar fascia, the muscles in the sole of the foot as we ease them open, and we actually strengthen them when we hold our feet in this shape. You're going to stay for about 2 more breaths if you can. You might be leaning forwards. You might have already come up, so perhaps you're coming up and then back down again. Last breath. And then when you come out, some of us might need to just tap, tap, tap the toes as you release them. And the knees might come just a fraction wider. I haven't got them quite as wide as hip width, but just one more thing to try here. Could you bring your right foot, so just the top of my foot is going to snuggle to the bottom of my left foot. So I've just crossed my feet one over the other. Right foot on top of the left, and just see how that feels as you push the hips back. And I'm kind of pressing my right foot down into the top of that left foot. A little myofascial release, little pressure point work, the top of your right foot just gently pressing down. If you're finding this is too intense, you can come up sooner. I'm about to come out of it anyway. And then lift your way up, and then look where your right hand is. Lift it and place your right foot roughly there. Coming into a slow lunge here where you might bring your right knee roughly on top of that right heel. Perhaps you've got blocks under the hands if you need a little extra space. For some of us, it could be necessary just to give yourself a little more length in those arms. And then start to lengthen through the front leg. So having 1 or 2 blocks can be really helpful. Doesn't matter which hand you place that block underneath, the other hand might come towards the hip. So it could be either or, okay? And then maybe if it feels possible, peeling the right toes here. You'll notice that I'm really not dropping my heart that low here. What I'm attempting to do though is avoid rounding through the upper back. I'm seeing if I can kind of tilt the sit bones back and see if the belly and the hip bones can come closer towards that right thigh. Now, this might be a little bit tricky. You might bend a little bit through that front leg, but we're going to walk the hands over to the right side. If you happen to have two blocks, that could be helpful. If you happen to have a block under the right hand over to the right side, that could be a little more ease. So what I've done here with one block, my left hand has just taken hold of my right wrist, and we're just seeing if we can take a twist. You might have both hands on the ground. And maybe the right toes might sway out to the side, and then the right toes might sway up towards the ceiling. If you can, out to the side, and then up towards the ceiling. One more time, out to the side, and back up towards the ceiling. Walk the hands forwards, bend the front leg, tuck the back toes, hover the knee. Come through to a high lunge, inhale, settle in, exhale. Just for another breath. And then we'll end up in a forward fold at the top edge of your mat. So lower the hands, little rock to step and to bow. Hands will begin to rise up, inhale, and hands to heart, exhale. Let's take a moment, pause, standing at the top edge of our mat. If you find that you need your eyes open for balance, go ahead and do that. Feet a good hip width apart for more support, bigger surface area. And just see if you can spread the weight across each four corners of your feet there. Some of us adding a little micro bend into the knees might be helpful. A moment to check back in. A moment of support towards yourself. We're going to bring the palms into heart space. Inhale, hands rise. Exhale to the earth, forward fold. Take a halfway lift, inhale. And then step back to high plank pose. From high plank, you may choose to drop the knees, otherwise stay in plank as you lean your weight forwards. Inhale, exhale, hug those elbows in as you slowly lower all the way between the elbows to the earth. Inhale through to little baby cobra, lifting the heart a few inches. Exhale, soften down. Can you create length through the neck? Inhale, lifting the heart. And exhale, soften. Could you keep the elbows hugging in? Inhale to lift. Maybe it's a little bit higher. Exhale, soften. Last time, lift as high as you feel comfortable. It could be that you've lifted and extended the arms fully. Maybe you've hovered the thighs for upward facing. And then to downward facing dog, exhale. From here, place the left foot between the hands, drop the right knee to the earth. If you've got two blocks, you might bring both of them in. Just taking a lunge here, trying to direct left knee straight forward so it doesn't collapse inwards to the center line. You could also have hands on the ground or on that front thigh or leg. And then half Halamana, half splits as we just see where we go on this side. Perhaps you walk the hands back. Maybe you've got a block under either hand for support. And again, see if you can think about the pelvis here. So it's almost like we've got two wheels on a cog and you're trying to turn those wheels forwards here. Your hip bones direct down and forwards and the sit bones direct up and back. You can keep a bend through the front leg if you need to, but maybe just gentle. If you feel like you could add that little side stretch in, perhaps the left hand goes a little wider out to the side. And for support, if you've got one block, maybe right hand takes hold of left wrist. Maybe you've got both hands on the ground. And then maybe left toes take a little wave out to the side, feeling through inner outer thigh there, back up, out to the side, a little wave of that left foot, back and forth. And then we're going to rebend the front leg, bringing props out of the way, tuck the back toes, and then high lunge again. Lifting the arms if you feel comfortable, or keeping hands to heart. Just taking a moment to feel the weight being even between front and back foot. And then hands towards the mat. Step it up. Take a halfway lift. Inhale. And to fold. Exhale. Hands will rise up. Inhale. And hands to heart. Exhale. Inhale, hands rise. And forward fold. Exhale. Halfway lift the spine. And maybe it's straight to downward dog or chaturanga. I'm going to step back, take a high to low. I'm hovering halfway this time. Working through upward facing or cobra. And we'll meet in downward facing dog when you're ready. Imagining that some of the thoughts from the day, from the week, are melting away through the crown of your head. From downward dog, lift the right leg to the sky. Place right foot in between the hands. High crescent lunge. And then settle in. Exhale. I'm going to invite you to hop the back foot in just a little bit closer so that you can ground the back heel to the earth. So when we're thinking about the feet, I'm just going to turn my back to you. Could you imagine that your right foot is pointing straight forwards on the mat and your left foot is just slightly out to the side here? Left toes go towards the front left corner of your yoga mat. You do not have to have your heels in a perfect straight line. See if you can have hip bones facing forwards. Sorry, both legs are straight. And then as you exhale, sweep the arms back behind you, micro bend the right leg, and then sweep the arms back up. Inhale. Exhale, sweep the arms back, micro bend the front leg. Inhale, hands rise. Exhale, sweep forwards, hold for 3. Could you notice if the hips are level? For 2. Long spine. For 1, you're going to lift back up again. Inhale. And then from here, interlace the fingers and maybe you point out through the index fingers. You're going to turn the right toes out to the right side. Lift the back heel and pivot on the back foot. Bring the outer blade of your left foot to the earth and then see if you can reach your fingers back. Maybe add a bend into the right leg. Feeling into a long line through the front of that left hip, through the left ribs, into the armpit. And then slowly lift up through the back foot, pivot those toes forwards. Warrior 2. That one's a tricky one to come out of. Take your time slowly. You end up in a warrior 2. Right knee roughly hovers on top of that right heel. Shoulders roughly hover on top of your hips. You're going to straighten through the front leg, pivot the left heel in, walk the feet so the heels are roughly in a straight line, and then bend the knees into goddess. Press down into the feet, maybe reach the arms up as you straighten the legs. And then bend those knees, hands back to heart. Press down, lightly squeeze the glutes, lift arms, straighten legs, and then bend through the legs. Pause, breathe. We're going to lean our right elbow onto the right thigh as you direct right toes forwards and you start to straighten the left leg and push the left heel to the back edge of the mat, working into side angle. You choose where you turn the gaze. See if you can peel the left shoulder back, peel the left hip back. And then look down, lower the hands to the earth, step back, downward facing or flow, taking whatever vinyasa feels good for you today. Coming to meet in downward facing dog. This time we'll lift the left leg to the sky. Inhale. Place left foot in between the hands. High crescent lunge. Take your time. Settle in. Pause. Breathe. So again, we're going to hop the back foot in. So little hop up. And take your time settling the feet where you want them to be. You can always change the arms at this moment. Hands at heart or hips. Right toes are straight forwards. Sorry, left toes are straight forwards, right toes slightly turned out as though they're facing the front right corner of your mat. And just notice if your pelvis has sort of started to open out to the right side, could both hip bones roughly be shooting straight forwards. And then as we sweep the heart forwards, micro bend the front leg, sweep the arms back, exhale. Lift back up, inhale. And then exhale, sweep the heart forwards, micro bend the front leg. Hands rise. And again, exhale. One more time, lift up. Interlace the fingers, point out through index fingers. And then you're going to turn the left toes out, lift up the back heel, pivot so you come onto the outer blade of the right foot, and then start to lean your shoulders and your hands to the back edge of the mat and maybe start to add a bend into the left leg. So we're taking this quite dynamic, twisty, archy shape. I choose to look down here behind me, a little bit off to the side on the left side of your mat. One more breath. You could always change the hands if that's not feeling good. And then start to slowly pivot the toes to face forwards. And then pivot your way through to warrior two. And really take your time then, there's no need to rush. Gently land left knee ruffling on top of the left heel. Virabhadrasana 2. We start to straighten through the front leg a little bit. As you pivot, right toes out. Check in with the heels. You want them roughly aligned. If you're feeling really wobbly, just turn the toes inwards a little bit more. And then bend the knees. Hands could stay at heart here. If you're like me, looking towards a wall, look straight down. Find something that you can focus on. Press down. Reach the hands as you straighten the legs. And then bend those knees, hands to heart. Lifting your way back up. Whatever breath rhythm works for you. One more time, reaching up. Last time, bend the knees. We're going to end up in that side angle. So start to pivot left toes forwards. Lean your weight into that left leg as you straighten through the right leg. Push the right heel away. Balance left elbow on that left thigh. And then see if you can reach right fingers overhead and forwards. We find extension and length all the way through that right side. Choose where you need to take your gaze. And then look down, plant the hands to the earth and flow however you'd like to flow. Being intuitive with your body's needs. We meet in downward facing. From downward facing dog, lift the right leg to the sky. Place the right foot in between the hands. High crescent lunge, hands rise. You're going to hop the back foot in again. Prepare for those pyramid legs so that you can ground the back heel. Bend a little bit through the front knee as you sweep heart forwards, hands back. And then lift your way back up. Inhale. Exhale, sweep your heart forwards, sit bones up, and then lift back up. Okay, you're going to come to pause, sweeping the heart forwards, hands back, maybe hands to the hips. Bend deeper through the standing leg, tilt the weight forwards as you just start to push the left toes back, and they might still touch the ground. If you feel like you could go there, you start to hover the back foot, warrior three. And some of you, for a really deep challenge, might actually see if you can lift your back leg and lower your heart today. So it's almost like a standing splits with no hands. Keep a little bend through your right leg. You're just doing whatever variation kind of works for you. So it might be that you're seesawed completely the opposite direction. Back leg could be lower and the heart much higher. And then this time step it up to the top edge of the mat. So you'll need to lift your heart up and then give it a good wiggle out once you've landed both feet to the top edge of the mat. From here, slowly bring your left foot around the front of the right. So it's like a cross of the ankles. And then start to push the hips towards your left side. And then reach the arms up, reach them overhead. And then start to tilt your left shoulder down and forwards as you start to bow. And you might just kind of lull here. If you have a block handy, you might take hold of that. You can soften through whatever leg you need to. And then just lull your way back to center. Once you're here in your forward fold, you're going to undo the bind at the feet and just bring your feet back to neutral. Soften down, forward fold, feet a good hip width. We're actually going to go the other way, but stay in your forward fold. So this time you're going to have right ankle in front of the left. And then see if you can sway the hips towards the right side. Bring your hands towards the left side. So it could be that bringing your hands on a block is helpful. You're just doing what you can here. And then press into your feet. Just do what you can in terms of lifting up. It can be quite a challenge with the feet in that bind. Just do what you can here. And roll up to center, undo the bind. Wiggling out those feet. From here, we're going to reach the hands high. Forward fold, exhale. Take a halfway lift and flow. We'll be meeting in downward facing dog. From downward dog, this time it'll be your left leg that rises. Place left foot between the hands, high crescent lunge. Pause for the exhale. Hop the back foot in again, ground the heel into our pyramid legs, and then soften lightly through the front leg as you bow. Reach the arms back. Inhale, hands rise. Exhale, soften through the front leg, bow, hands sweep back. Hands rise. On our next sweep forwards of the heart, you're going to pause again. So this is a challenge. Do what you can. Deepen the bend into the front leg as you start to tilt the weight forwards. Take all of the weight into that left leg as we start to push right toes back. Maybe you start to hover the whole leg. You're just going where it feels appropriate for you in your body today. If you feel like you could go there today, it's like a standing split where we start to lower the heart. I could do it on the other side, but not this one today. And whoop, can see which side is weaker in my body. Maybe the back leg will lift. And then you'll need to lift up a little way, or a lot slowly does it. And we come to stand. Thank goodness there was a ball next to me. Wiggle it out. So this time we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're actually going to come into eagle legs. So it's another balance. And you're just going to attempt to do what you can here. So bring the weight into your right foot. Bend through the knees. Now, what I find a lot of people do is they start to straighten through the standing leg. Try to keep that standing leg bent at all times, if not really quite bent. So we're going to see if we can take hold of that left ankle and bring it over the top of that right thigh. And you're just doing what you can here. So staying holding on to the leg is probably worthwhile. You don't necessarily need to let go. And then notice if one hip is higher than the other, could you stabilize the hips? And you're here just for 2 more breaths. Some of you might be able to squat down deeper with the hips and lower the heart further. And then once we're out of this, you're going to press down, lift the left knee. If you can, lift the arms. And then step back to a warrior 2 if possible. So reach left foot back. And we land warrior 2 once again. Start to straighten through the legs, pivot the back heel in. Check in with the heels. Hands to heart, bend the knees. Goddess. Press down through the feet, lift the arms, straighten the legs, and then lower again. Press down, reach high, and then lower again. One more time, lifting and lowering. We transport the weight forwards, right toes to the front edge, lean the right elbow on that right knee, extended side angle. So you want to push the left heel out, that's the back heel. And then look towards the earth, bring your hands to the mat and just pause, walk the right foot roughly where your right hand is, drop the left knee to the earth. So from here, I'm going to invite you to walk that right foot over towards the left side. Keep it walking, 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 and just try to cross the right knee roughly in front of the left knee. I'm going to walk my hands a little bit over to the left side, so I'm more even. And then as you push the hips back, your feet widen. Your hips are not going to touch the ground, they'll just hover, and the right knee will lift up off the earth. And maybe you could settle into this hybrid child's pose. If you're finding this too intense with the legs, you might choose just to go to regular child's pose. We're here for a couple more breaths if you can. Don't worry about how high the hips are, but maybe in time you'll be able to drop the hips a little bit lower behind you. So this is quite tricky, but we're going to bring the hands closer towards us, and then we're going to see if we can drop the hips. And as you drop the hips down, bring right foot to the earth. Now this might also be quite tricky to sit upright here, so you can always lean a little bit to your left side and then extend the bottom leg. So we could be in this variation instead. Maybe you've got the bottom leg bent. And just for a moment, try to sit tall, trying to connect the sit bones towards the ground. And if it feels good, maybe add a little twist, turning the heart towards your right side. And then from here, we'll lean towards the left side, sweep the legs behind you, and walk the hands out in front of you. Back to downward dog, where you might choose to pedal that out a little bit. Somehow we're going to end up towards the top edge of the mat, step walk or jump to the top. Take a halfway lift and fold. Hands rise up. Hands to heart. Okay, so this time we're going to try to bring the weight into our left foot, and then that right ankle is attempting to hover on that left knee. Maybe you're taking hold of the foot and the knee and just checking in with the hips where you can. If possible, you're trying to push hips back, heart lower, but you're just in a place where you feel like you could hold. 2 more breaths if you're able to. Don't worry if you've changed this up, it could be a tree pose instead. So I'm going to press down into the left foot. The right knee is going to hover. Maybe you can take the hands with you and then step the right foot to the back of the mat, warrior 2. Give yourself a moment to settle in. And then begin to straighten through the front leg, pivot the right heel in. Take your time to align the heels, hands to heart, bend the knees. And then press down, reach the hands up. And bend the knees, hands lower. Working with a breath that just feels natural, fluid for you. I'm lowering down. I'm going to take one more round. Lifting. And then lowering. And then we transition to that side angle. So you lean your weight forwards. Push the right heel away, left toes forwards. Extended side angle. Come to pause for one more breath. And then you'll lower the hands towards the earth. Lower the back knee. And then try to scoot that right foot over to the left. It might be that you walk the hands off a little bit. I'm just going to shimmy more centered on my mat. And then try to widen the feet. Your hips will drop and they're not touching the ground at this point. The left knee will lift off the earth. And then just settling down where you can. This little hybrid child's pose that we're settling into. One more breath. This can be a little bit tricky, but we're going to see if we can rock the weight back. Attempt to get the sit bones to the earth. And if you're struggling with that, you could extend the bottom leg. So take your time just to set up, feel into that, how you need to be. And I'm directing the left knee up towards the ceiling, trying to hug that left knee in towards the chest, sitting upwards here. So maybe the bottom leg is straight, maybe it's bent. And then if it feels okay, you might choose to take a bit of a twist towards your left side. Support yourself with the left hand behind you. Trying to stay quite upright if you can. And then soften to face forwards. Go ahead and extend your legs forwards. Shimmy your hips to the center of your mat. And then gently start to roll your way down. If you happen to have a block, you might like to take that with you. Some of us will choose to take a supported bridge at this point. Otherwise, a more active one with no props. So when you might feel ready, walk the feet in, at least hip width. Those of you who are going to use your block, your prop, get that handy. I'm going to go for the sort of mid-height with the block here. We want to walk shoulder blades in a little bit, press down firmly through the feet as you bring your prop into place and place it directly underneath sit bones and tailbone. For us that are in a passive shape, just let yourself settle here. Some of you will be in a more contracted way, seeing if you can avoid the knees widening or the toes turning out. Also see if you can avoid the knees actually dropping in towards one another. Make sure that you've got a good shelf happening with your shoulder blades. You don't want any pressure right at the top of the neck there. So wedging shoulder blades inwards can feel good. And just resting for 3 more breaths. If you're taking the active variation, you're welcome to slowly lower already. Or maybe take a couple of rounds through that. Those of us who have got the block wedged, we want to remove it just as gently as you place it in. So press down firmly first through the feet. And hover the hips just enough that you can slide your prop out of the way, landing the hips to the earth, and maybe a little windscreen wipe of those legs from side to side feels good right about now. You might choose to land the knees one way, maybe turn the head the other way. And then draw yourself back to center, and then again, land knees the other way, turning your head away. And slowly coming back to center. It is time to settle into Shavasana. Maybe you're gathering props, a pillow, a blanket, an eye mask. Whatever feels right for you to settle here. It can be nice to take a few expressive exhalations as well at this moment. Letting go through the mouth. Maybe just start off by noticing the rise and fall of your belly once again as you breathe. And if it feels right for you to now add some movement elsewhere, it could be a little wiggle of fingers of toes. Maybe you start to add a really generous stretch, fingers away from toes. And perhaps you'll decide to slowly roll onto the side. You might choose to stay there for a couple of breaths. And when you do feel ready, you'll slowly start to return to an upright seated posture. I invite you to gently place palms somewhere on the legs. A gift of now. Just like we did at the beginning of our practice, a moment to tune inwards and to once again check that weather gauge. Not putting any expectations on things to be completely different or transformed. Just noticing once again. As a way to honor your practice, bringing palms together, thumbs into heart space, a connection to oneself. And then perhaps transitioning thumbs to the center of forehead as we connect to one another. We bow with gratitude.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like it below, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon. Not only will this keep you up to date with my offerings, but will keep content like To The Being free and accessible to all.